What happens when you take two guys from New York who absolutely love to talk and give them a license to rant? You get your hosts, John Peasy and Mikey Sausage.
Wow, that was like a sharp cut in. I didn't expect that. Usually he fades us in. He just, boom, he went right to us.
It's like our lives. We're fading. We're fading, Sausage. We're fading. How you doing?
I don't know. I don't know if I'm very happy today. I don't know.
You look pretty happy.
It's not often you get like really smart like people to come on the show. So
hey, what about me?
I'm gonna, like I said, we don't often get very smart people come on the show, and I feel like maybe I'm going to feel a little stupid today, but we'll see.
Well, you want to be consistent. Don't you want to be consistent on a daily basis?
I guess so. Let's go. So before we went to tape, someone called you up and they wanted you to do a show for them. So
tonight,
yeah, tonight. I'm glad that you're going to lose that money now. That's awesome.
This is the second one I've lost for today, by the way, because I had another one I turned down for these. Yeah.
And,
it's all good. You know, people do things last minute now because of the pandemic. The pandemic makes everyone like, oh, let's do something quick. Let's do this. Let's do that. No one's planning anything because the environment keeps changing, as you know. So
I don't know. I just came out with this thing now that Johnson & Johnson, people are getting these weird blood clots, and I don't know what's going on.
I'm not taking it. I'm not taking any of it. I'm not.
I still got antibodies, so I'm hanging in there. So
I had a blood test a week ago, and I had, after 1 year and 2 weeks, still have antibodies. And my doctor said that I was an enigma. And I was like, what do I do now? He goes, you still get the shot. I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. I'll be doing that.
Dude, this is my, well, we're recording this right now. So, but what's today, the 14th?
Yes, it is, April 14th.
April 14th. So it's the 10th, 11th, 12th was East 13th. I was still on the ventilator at this point. I was still sleeping. So
yeah, and you were one of the few to get HCQ.
Who? Hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah, you were one of the few.
Hydroxychloroquine. Yeah, actually, I just went to follow up with the pulmonologist that was in the hospital. The guy saved my life. This guy, and he said I'm a miracle. So. Now you're working with a miracle, buddy. I want you to know that.
Well, I'm going to start doing telethons for you soon. I'm going to put you in a wheelchair and roll you through Channel 4. It'll be so much fun.
Why don't you let us know who's our guest today to get on this stuff?
Listen, you know me. I'm super excited. I am super excited. As a matter of fact, I want to hijack our guest for a weekend and just drink coffee and break and just rip into his head for a week. I'd love to see behind his eyeballs for a good week or so. You know, because that's the problem, is that you really can't get behind people's eyeballs and see the world the way they see it. They can only tell you what they see. And once you get behind somebody's eyeballs, it'd be really good to see the perspective outward as rather trying to take it inward. And so I've been watching this guy for a while on YouTube, and he's one of those guys that as he explains what he's doing, it unfolds in front of your eyes. And you're like, and another, you know.
Oh, so you say that he peels the onion back a little at a time.
Yeah, that's right. And basically, all the stuff he's doing is about gematria and numerology, and he's a math expert. Which, by the way, I'm an idiot when it comes to math. I mean, not numbers. You know, numbers are a really difficult thing for me growing up as a kid. As a matter of fact, when I was a kid, I preferred to do arithmetic when I was naked. This way I could count to 21 pretty easily.
Your wife is really good at math, but more at subtraction.
Yeah. On the gold card. Anyway, so this gentleman, Marty Leeds, is the author of many books, and he has an ongoing lecture series available for free on YouTube at Marty Leeds 33. So it's youtube.com/Marty Leeds, LEEDS.
He gives it away for free, for no money.
For free. Well, he has a website you could join, which I was not aware you could join, which I'm going to do tonight after the show. He has a site that you could actually join up for this other stuff that I was not aware of, which I'm going to join now. But he has a great subscription and a unique material on the site. And he's actually done his own podcast for a while as well, called the Marty Leeds Mathematical Radio Hour, where he discusses things from myth and math and spirituality and philosophy and sacred geometry and lost civilizations and holy sciences. I mean, really great. I first heard of him a long time ago when he was on Coast to Coast, I think with George Norrie, C2C.com. And I'm super jacked to have this guy here. I mean, super jacked. Please welcome the wonderful and the great Marty Leeds. There he is. Got the music.
Hello, Mr. Leeds.
Good. How are you guys? Thanks for having me on.
Very cool. Thanks for coming.
Sound a little low to you, John, or is it me?
What's that?
He sound a little low, or is it me?
No, he sounds fine to me.
Okay.
Yeah, he sounds good.
Am I good?
I appreciate. Yeah, you sound good, Marty. I appreciate coming on. I know you just moved from Hawaii to Wisconsin, so yes. I'm sure life is busy. It's really, really busy. Now, Marty, just before we even get into all the things that you do, because I really want to open up people that listen to us and to you, because I think we have a different group of people listening to us. And I was telling you earlier, we should do something a little rudimentary, but first of all, how did you get into numbers? I mean, how does numbers become your thing? How does that evolve into your life as a child and to where you are now?
Oh, I mean, okay, the short answer in a nutshell is basically just like going through some process of truth seeking, right? After a while, you get so much, so many perspectives and you listen to so many different people and you read so much stuff and that sort of stuff. And it's like, want to try to find truth. And ultimately, I realized it's like, you can't really listen to all these people. There's so many people that are full of shit and so many people have just ideas and things like that. And so I was like, okay, how do I sort of get past all of that and penetrate and find something that's actually true? That ended up leading to numbers, because numbers, it's 2 plus 2 quantitatively will always equal 4. A squared plus b squared is going to equal c squared. And so it really got to the point where it's like, okay, well, people can lie to you about all sorts of things in the world, but numbers never lie. You can always you can lie with numbers, but numbers themselves never lie. You can always find the genuine article, if you will, if you seek it out through what I came to understand was a language of nature itself, a language of God itself, or the creator itself. And so that started with me being like, I know you were just talking me up being like some intelligent guy, but I was an idiot with math too. Complete idiot with math. I was not a math, I didn't have any inclinations with math. I got a C in college algebra, and I just went in and I started learning it myself. And I started, wow. I tell the story that when I first started this, I was doing multiplication tables again. Like literally I was writing out in my notebook 1 times 9, 2 times 9, just like a child basically. And I just learned it from the ground floor myself. And I didn't have anybody, some sort of overarching or whatever, dictator, whatever, being like, oh, you can do this and you can't do this and this is wrong and this is right. I just, I went in and learned it myself. And that's really when I learned more and more and more and just got more familiar with the subject, I started realizing that so much of math was leading to religious ideas, that there was a commonality that you found, like a perennial sort of philosophy that you found within all of these religions. And the one thing that there was these geometric metaphors in there, these numeric archetypes and metaphors that kept popping up. And so from there, it just unfolded. So.
It's interesting too.
How does math bleed into religion? So what do you give? Can you give me an example?
Yeah, well, tons of examples actually. Like, the first example you can take is, or I'll give you 2, that when you start studying like comparative mythology or you look in different religions, you'll find that a lot of these cultures, even like primitive cultures, right? Or what we know as primitive cultures, they had the same numbers that were sacred. Right, 3, 7, the Trinity. You'll find literally all over the world. You'll find it in the Norse myth. You'll find it in Celtic myths. You'll find it in the Bible. You'll find it in Egyptian mythology. You'll find it in Hindu mythology. So I saw that, and instead of seeing all the divisions and being like, oh, these are all separate religions and things like that, I was like, wait a second, what's the commonality here? And I realized that over, you have all these different religions that speak, that are different races or groups of people or cultures, and they speak different languages, and they're, born at different times. Yet, all of these differentiations, right? Well, I was like, okay, what's the common theme behind all of them? That was ultimately the language of math. That basically what they were pointing to was that, once again, there's this sort of universal language of nature herself, if you will, and that ultimately the sacred ideas within religions were pointing to this fundamental language. So number 7 across the world is sacred. You can go again and again and again and find 7. Well, why? That was my question. Same sort of thing with 3. Why? So that's just kind of where it led.
Do you come across, well, because the only thing I really know about numbers and, let's say, bad luck, like I know, like, Chinese people that come to America don't like 4s or in their address to their house. Like, there is some, I mean, are there other religions or let's say nationalities or whatever it is that believe the same thing besides that? Because that's all I know. So, like, I know that the Chinese, they like 8s, for instance. I don't know if you know that or you don't know that. I'm just saying that.
Well,
they eat a lot of vegetables.
That's the problem.
No, did you know that, PC?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't.
Yeah. They will not buy a house like with a 4 in it. It means death. It's like,
really?
It's like crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. When people want to sell things. What? Say it again?
Yeah. No, you'll find that as well, superstitions, very, very strong superstitions will grow, manifest around numbers as well. I mean, 666 is a huge one. 13 is one, of course. You always see, like you were saying, the Chinese, they really love 8. And yeah, I think you're correct. 4
they won't put 13s in a lot of hotels. You won't see a 13th floor.
Mm-hmm. A lot of hotels, exactly. So it's people, so many people, like you guys were all saying as well. It's like you're not really that, well versed in numbers and things like that. You always had sort of an aversion to it, right? And yet you see, once again, all of these people have a relationship, sometimes very strong relationships to numbers, like 666, 13, or 4, and yet we really don't even understand what I deem as a language. We don't understand that language. So all sorts of things can come up within that. Like, I don't know how many people. Let me give you an example. 13, always this, right? As you just said, floor, 13th floor, that sort of thing. I remember I was working at this place one time, and there was this one Christian woman, and she was getting married, and she said, well, I was going to get married on this one date, but it was the 13th. And she's like, I don't want to get married because of, that sort of thing. And me, I was just kind of like, well, Jesus had 12 disciples in him, and that's 13. So why, as a Christian, why would you like, that's not superstitious. That's like Jesus and his dudes. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's all those sorts of things. You start unraveling it and you realize there's just basically a whole world that most people don't even know exists with numbers, so.
This is, I'm thinking too, well, I always think of humor, which is not necessarily fair, but they always say there's power in numbers, right? And I think, well, talk about 6 million Jews. Didn't go out too well for them. But the thing I'm thinking here when you're saying that is what began first? Was it the numbers that began first, or was it the language? I would assume that the numbers started first, and then suddenly we associated that with people's language. And then the next question is then where does the language come from? I hear that it started with the Canaanites, and the Hebrews got it from the Canaanites, and then they took it, and later on it became, I believe, Kabbalah later on, Kabbalah.
Well, okay, so there's a few things there. The origin of language, number one, is a damn mystery. As far as like spoken language, as far as Chinese, Italian, English, Hebrew, we have these, what we're told in history, that there's the Semitic branches of language and those were first and blah, 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 blah. But I don't trust any of that at all. Language is one of the great occult mysteries. Mining the languages is just like an endless mystery, because there is no for me, there's no objective record of history. So the idea of peeling back and be like, oh, English was established this date, and it's like, get out of here. So we don't have that answer. The answer we do have, though, for the language of math, which absolutely came first, that's like essentially your primordial or primeval language of the creator, and the creator has used that language to create this world, and and to me that's an absolutely provable statement. That came first. And that's really what I talk about when you talk about basically, once again, that there's like an alphabet of the divine, and that alphabet is letters, but those letters are numbers. Okay, just like you have the letter T and the letter G and the letter H. It essentially, it's those letters with numbers, and those are 2, 3, 5, 7, etc. You know, and those principles, not only the numbers themselves, but their correlates in geometry, how they're understood, their interactions, their qualities, their principles are universal. There's not a single person out there that can't tell me that 3, 4, if it's a right angle, that's going to be 5. There's no one. It doesn't matter what language you speak, where you came from, what, that sort of thing. So what I see is that a lot of the religious impulse, where a lot of these religions came from, realized that when they pointed to this, they realized, no, that's universal, it's irrefutable, it's infallible, and it's metaphysical. It's always here, and yet it's nowhere. It's not like you could go down and, take exit 48 and, get off at 666 there and take a right on the Citgo, and you're going to drive down and find, oh, there's the physical number 10. There it's been. But the number 10 or the number 7 or the number 63 is everywhere, always. But it doesn't have any physical station. So there, now you have this, like, once again, a language of nature itself. You're like, well, where does this come from? Where, then there's another one that you throw on top of that. It's like, well, numbers are also infinite, which means, let me explain it this way. The number 3 is always going to have the properties of the number 3. It's always going to be a prime. It's, if you square 3, it's always going to equal 9. If you triangulate 3, it's always going to equal 6. If you put 3 into a triangle, though, the internal degrees of that triangle will always equal 180. Those things are true, and they will always be true, and they'll forever be true. Now, that's just the number 3. Now go to the number 4. Now go to the number 8. Now go to the number 12. Now go to the number 1,682,462. Where does all that come from? You have to say a creator. That's what you have to say. Now you get so far as to, I don't want to rant here, but then you get so far as to see that it's like, well, those principles have been put on you. Those fundamentals have literally been crafted onto the human temple. So
explain that. Explain to people how this is on our bodies, because I don't think people really understand how we carry around the God's gift of numbers on our body.
We are made in the image of the creator. Okay. And that's a consistent theme within many different religious beliefs. That's as above, so below. I mean, you can go everywhere from alchemy to, etc. And that's this idea that, okay, so when you look at the human being is a reflection of the totality of the whole thing. Okay. We're like a little microcosm. We're a fractal. We're that sort of thing. Right. So then when you look at what's put right in front of you, you have 10 digits. They're separated 5 and 5. Well, this is what I call the alphabet of the divine. In Kabbalistic study, this would be known as the 10 emanations of God. And all it is, once again, it's that alphabet that I was talking about before. That's numeric, that the creator uses, if you will. And that's the numbers or digits or emanations, whatever you want to call them. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And it's with those 10 numbers or digits or units, whatever you want to call them, that you can create every other number in creation. So it doesn't matter how big, complex, infinite that number is, you will always use those digits. And those digits, even though the number, how we draw it might be different from this culture to that, but the principles and the qualities and the axioms behind those numbers are universal. And that's period. Everybody experiences the number 2 the same way, that sort of thing. So those things, that alphabet, if you will, has been placed right on you, literally right in front of you. And then it gets even to, further divisions of your hands to find even more math, that sort of thing. But the basics have literally been put on your hands and on your feet.
like 0 to 9. That's it, right? So
That's
you
it.
got
I mean, it's
right.
this is what's so brilliant about it too. It's because, like I always say, simplicity. I mean, it's a quote from Da Vinci or whatever, but simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, right? So when we talk about an alphabet, like we're speaking English, so we've got our 26 letters. Well, God only used 10 in that sense. Do you know what I mean? Like his alphabet, he just needed those 10 digits, and he's literally can make any other number. He can use those digits to create any degrees or geometry, you know. And then when you see that geometry unfolds everywhere around you, from the growth of a tree to how a beetle will form, to the a bee's hive and have the hexagons, or the snowflakes that fall from the sky, they all form in geometry. So there's once again that universal language that's literally right in front of us and all around us. And let's just say our school systems do a bang up job of making sure we don't understand it.
It's really
So true.
funny. Like I never even thought about that, like a beehive and the snowflakes and all that. It's geometry. It's wild. That's true.
And children, and once again, we're just not taught it, but children can understand it. And even just the beauty and elegance and simplicity of things. Like you don't even have to get into this is where a lot of times like people will get lost in the numbers and stuff like that, but you really don't need to be lost in a bunch of numbers to see the elegance and the beauty of a flower. And yet that flower is just unfolding, and it's just like, oh, just 5 little petals here. I'm unfolding in this Fibonacci sequence of just 130, or whatever it's degree of phyllotaxis, and it's 137.5 and blah blah blah. Okay, well, we can get lost in numbers and stuff like that, but what is the number? What are they actually expressing? Well, beauty, elegance, simplicity, design, form, pattern, all that sort of stuff that we can actually extract and extrapolate from the thing itself. And human beings, by the way, are the only species here that can do that. So
that leads me right to that makes me think right away, then how is it that those numbers turn bad or evil? Like you're showing how numbers create everything in reality physically. So great. How does it turn into something poor or bad or angry or nasty or mean or ruthlessly evil?
That's the work of humans. It's the same sort of, and that's what I was talking about. And it's true. It's basically human beings coming along and distorting or perverting something, right? Or at least people's perception of it, right? Once again, like 13 is a perfect example. Like how many people have that superstition of 13? And so they won't get married on that day, or blah, blah, they won't buy a house or whatever it is. Well, there's nothing inherently wrong with the number 13. It's just a prime, and our alphabet's the cipher's based on that. I don't want to get into that too much, but so that comes from, once again, people's imaginations being or superstitious or occult ideas placed on numbers, so people will fear them, because there's actually a lot of answers in numbers. Another example is 666. People will fear 666 because they take one line out of the Bible and they're like, look, Revelation 13:18, here's wisdom. 666 is the number of the beast. Well, once again, how much fear and superstition, even in Hollywood movies and stuff like that, is placed in front of you all the time. Like, here, 666 is evil. You go to a chapter and a half later, or 2 chapters later in the Bible, and it talks about how these people that were standing and playing the harps of God with the Lamb had slayed the dragon and had command of his number and his name and his image. That's just 2 chapters later. Nothing to be fearful about. In fact, it's actually a story about commanding your own will and your power, and having fortitude and strength and not being scared of shit. But how does it play out in our society? 666 is evil. So that's just how it is.
I watched this morning a woman on gematria, an African American woman that, and I don't know, it came up after your YouTubes, and she was doing 1, 3, and 6, and she mentioned that 3 is a constant spiral, going up or going down. If you take the number 3, it's always going to go up or it's always going to go down, which reflects the life of going up and going down, as opposed to 6, which comes down and gets caught into a circle that you stay in. So you're coming down into a circle, and then saying that 9 is going up, elevating you above. And I never heard that before, because I'm just starting to learn about gematria. And as I start looking into it, it seems as if, you really have to become familiar with each number and understand their values and what they really mean, and then how they apply to our language.
Yeah, okay. I mean, this is one of the biggest problems that I have with people that do a lot of gematria online, because they're actually, most of these people, and I don't mean to say this, I actually get a lot of shit because I say this, but whatever, I just have to say what I have to say. They're numerically illiterate completely, which is fine, right? I was numerically illiterate at one point. I just had to study it. Just like I don't, if I was to say, you know what I'm illiterate about? How to change the catalytic converter out of a 1997 Chevy Lumina. I don't know how to do that. I'm completely illiterate on that. I'm not going to go around saying I do know, right? Well, what you have with a lot of these gematrinators have never done any sort of qualitative or even quantitative study in some respects with a lot of these numbers, what their associations with geometry are, what their divisors are, any of that sort of stuff. And then they go around and they punch a bunch of stuff into a calculator and think that they're making connections. And it's really just a bunch of people, as far as I can tell, talking about math, but never really studying it, And so I have a lot of those people. I have no idea who you were, particularly talking about, John, there, but I have a lot of problem with those people because it's just a lot of, mismatching and puff into a calculator instead of actually getting to the root of what this study is, So.
I mean, I'm sure I could take the numbers and create something out of it also. I mean, so like, I can understand what he was saying, but I'm sure but just, basically.
Well, yeah, but what to what you were saying, John, as far as like, this is what's really interesting is that most symbolism comes from numbers, comes from the creation of geometry. And those symbols actually are very potent as far as their, what's the wisdom behind them and the philosophy and stuff like that. And so whenever you see everything from like a cross or an all-seeing eye of God or a Star of David that's all geometry. And so many people will go and look at symbols and not understand that first and foremost, that symbol is relating information in a language that's numeric and geometric. Well, most people, when they try to study symbols, they don't start there. They start with their beliefs or opinions or whatever it is, and then they sort of graft onto that what it means, and that's not the way you do proper
What a great point.
Learning.
That is such a great point. That really is. And see that, and that leads me next to symbolism. I love the study of symbolism. I've been looking. I don't know a lot about it, but whatever I do learn about it, I notice that it's everywhere and it's being imposed on you. And then it starts to make you think: is there an actual reason why these symbols, which, like you say, are really geometric, are these symbols being presented in front of us to empower other people from it, as in magic with a K, or as in a sorcerer, or as in a magician of some sort, using symbology to manipulate you or me for their own strength, growth, power, whatever that. I'm not even clear about how it works. I just understand that there's a power to symbology, and you're saying it's starting with geometry. So you start with math, You create a symbol, and you create sigils, which empower the person that puts them out. Am I correct?
Yes, it's also it's also in a secrets in plain sight kind of thing, right? Because when a few things here, the evil people co-opt stuff. Let me say this: objects or symbols or ideas that are full of actual light, wisdom, things that bring us closer, things that help us understand the common good, God, humanity, all of those things. The first thing that evil people are going to do is, if there's a big old light over here, the devil and all his minions, for lack of a better phrase, are going to go and shroud that light. They're going to go and wrap themselves up in it and try to put, you know what I mean? So that way, if any little bit of light comes out and people see that, they're going to look over, and the first thing they're going to see is, oh, look, all the devil worshippers are over there. Don't go and try to understand what the all-seeing eye of God is because Mark Zuckerberg's used it, or it's used here, or it's used in the CIA logo, that sort of thing. So that's the first lesson that I learned was, they want you to fear these things and call it a cult and put all of these definitions on it so you never look at it. So that's the first thing that happens with symbols. The second thing is that a lot of times they can just put this stuff out right in front of you, and because it's secrets in plain sight, and they know that you don't know, and I didn't know at one point, and most people don't know, they just put it right out, literally hand it to you on a plate and be like, here you go, knowing that you don't have a damn clue. And then what happens, like as I just said, most people that don't have a damn clue, then all of these interpretations of what that is mean, or what that means, they get all these interpretations from YouTube or whoever it is, and they say, oh, this is what this means, and it drops in their lap, and this is what this means, it drops in their lap, and they're like, okay, as opposed to just kind of taking all of that and say, I'm going to go right to the source and I'm going to figure it out myself. That's when you get truth, because it's not tainted by people's beliefs or their opinions or their whatever it is, preconceived notions or their biases. And it's not tainted by somebody who, some devilish person that came in and washed it with a bunch of darkness. You take all of that away and you get right to the core of it. So this is what's happening with symbolism a lot. A lot of truth is actually displayed through symbols by evil people, because they're like, well, we know it and we know you don't.
So. I don't know about you, Mike, but my head just like explodes. My mind's got I have 40 questions that went through my head before he can even finish the statement. I'm thinking, wait a minute, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? When you think about this too, did you first become religious, or did you become religious from numerology and numbers and understanding math? Because I know you seem to be a Christian-based type person. You seem to talk a lot about spirituality, and I believe it's Christian-based. And the first thing it makes you think is, well, wait a minute, how did you arrive at this? Were you raised this way, or were you, when you started your study of math, you started saying, hey, wait a minute, there's nothing in this universe but math, and math's come from a creator? But like, in other words, the chicken and the egg with you when it comes to religion.
Well, I wasn't raised religious at all, right? And so my parents basically were just like, hey, go figure shit out. You know what I mean? It was kind of one of those things. So I didn't have which a lot of people have, years and years of sort of indoctrination, if you will, in churches or belief systems and stuff like that. And that will actually sort of steer them off course from ever going back to it, because they're like, yeah, well, the nun used to beat the shit out of me in class and whatever it is, And so I never started in that realm at all. In fact, I went into science many years. Like, I read Carl Sagan, I read Stephen Hawking, I was up, and I read a lot, mind you, but I started there. And then when science really wasn't giving me the answers that I wanted, then there was this whole other mystery called religion. And so it was like, okay, well, what's going on with that shit? It was like that sort of thing. So then when I got into religion, one of the first things I got into was not even math, was actually comparative mythology. And that was one of the first things that struck me, was like, wait a second, you've completely disparate cultures, different civilizations living at different times. Why does I'm not saying that they're all exactly the same, but same themes and elements clearly coming up again and again and again. I gave some, references like the Trinity and stuff like that. So to me, it was like, okay, after a while, there was so much evidence that this thing was created that I had to say, well, there is a creator. Right. Then when I got to math, it was proof, because it was like, then I had to face the fact that it was like, I looked at this whole canon of information, this whole language, and my question was the same thing that I brought up here. Where the hell does all this come from? What is all this? How is it such order and perfection and form? And it has a constant stasis. It's universal. Where the heck does it come from? Where does all of it come from? So that's when, then I was like, it really just sort of kept pushing, really, is all. It wasn't necessarily one particular moment, but it was just like, no, keep going, keep going, keep going. And then go ahead. No, go ahead.
Some people would say it came from aliens.
Well, what you ultimately have to do is give proof, right? So if you said open. Like,
we have proof.
What's that?
The border's open.
What's that?
The border is open.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, I can't help it.
It's okay. You have to say, okay, well, if it did come from an external source, like an extraterrestrial source, was something like that. First off, you'd have to believe in space and all that stuff, which I don't. But beyond all that, then you'd have to say, well, then the aliens are the same thing that created the flower that's coming up and expressing this geometry. And then it created the degree of phyllotaxis over here. Then it created, well, the fingers of my hands. And then it created the 365 days of the solar year, and it et cetera, et cetera. So then we have to realize, like, even if aliens were to brought the knowledge of numbers, the knowledge of numbers was already here.
But can it be both? Can it be an ultimate creator and also other life forms at the same time.
Well, once again, you'd have to prove the other life forms. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like we can,
so
we can prove that there's.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I didn't hear
I didn't mean to cut you off. No, I didn't say nothing.
Oh no. Space dinosaurs is always in. No. Ultimately, we would have to. We like with numbers and the expressions of numbers universally through our world. Meaning that, let me say this: you see the expression of numbers in the sky and where you count them, the number of days of the cycle of the sun, the cycle of the moon, the cycle of Venus. You see it all the way up there, the patterns of the stars above, and all of that sort of stuff. Then you go all the way down to literally, once again, how a flower grows, that sort of thing. So you can go into your experiential world, everything that's right in front of you, how you clock how old you are, when you weigh yourself, when you go, every science that you deal with, every single science you deal with, ultimately you deal with math. Doesn't matter what it is. So then so you can prove that, okay, that is a universal language that's everywhere. And it's not just put in this one little place here. It's literally on your feet, on the ground below your feet. It's expressed in the plants, things that are, moving and non-moving, animate and inanimate objects, things in the stars. There's, once again, it's basically a universal intelligence, that's everywhere. So you can see if it was given to humankind, it would have to be given through literally everything that we experience in that sense.
It's a great perspective. It's a great perspective. Hey, let me ask you something. And this, there's so much to uncompact and, to open up here, but you seem to be a very energetic guy. So one, are you a Christian?
Yeah.
Number two,
I'm a. Go ahead.
Are you a vegan?
No.
Okay. Did you? I don't think you actually answered. I know that when it comes to religion, did religion find you, or the numbers find religion? Because I know you kind of went around it, but you really didn't say the bottom line of it.
Okay. Kind of one in the same. Once again, like I was so, how do I explain this? I was, especially coming from such a very analytical and scientific mindset, right? Like for the longest time, I was like, oh, if God exists, there's a creator. Because I was just a rebellious sort of, skateboarding kid from Wisconsin, listening to heavy metal music and all that sort of stuff. And people would say this all the time. Yeah, you got to believe this and faith in this and God exists and blah, blah, blah. And my thing was always like, prove it. Shut up. Stop telling me stuff unless you can actually prove it, that sort of thing. So for me, the idea is like, okay, if I'm going to believe in a creator, then that creator, in a sense, this seems very cocky now to think about it, but I was almost like, no, God, you prove it to me. You prove it to me, God. I'm not going to take this guy's position or listen to Pastor Bob over here or listen to Preacher Steve down or this holy book here is the answer. This one doesn't. I said, no, I'm not even going to believe any of that until I can prove it myself. So with numbers, then it got to a point where I was like, for a lot of the reasons I just said, I was like, where does this come? I can't disprove this at all. Because it has so much form, so much function, once again, so much universality, it's infallible. That's when it was like, oh, okay, I can't prove that. I have to say that this is obviously intelligence. It's obviously intelligent. It's intelligence in motion, in action, in movement, right in front of us. Where does it come from? Then it got to, once again, then I related all of that to, oh, these are found in these religious texts. Now, when I say I'm a Christian, I say I'm a Gnostic Christian, which is basically just this understanding that there is a perennial philosophy. In this sense, there's a universal religious process for every human being that's embedded within the framework of reality itself. That's crafted within our experiential world. It's crafted within nature. That universal religious process is the same thing that's found at the core, esoterically, of almost all of the major religions. And you'll find those commonalities. I basically choose or understand it through Christianity because of lots of things. Extended family, where I grew up, my language, what I just feel more connected to. that's obviously Christianity, and I've fallen in love with it because of that. But because I'm that does not mean I reject the other religions. In fact, I have friends that are heathens. I have friends, that sort of thing. In fact, once again, I always try to find what I call the golden thread within all of these faiths, within all of these traditions, and that's really what it's all about for me. So,
what connects us, not disconnects us. What about
yeah.
can these numbers tell us our future? Because
See,
and then when I
yeah,
say that,
I don't.
what's the next question after saying can it tell? And then my next thing was, well, do you invest in Bitcoin? Are you in the stock market? I mean,
Yeah. Number one, don't take economic advice from Marty Leeds. That's the number one thing. I'll tell you that. So,
you have a nice hat.
Yeah, it was only $5. So, $4.50 actually. No, I don't play those games. Like I do not do any. And once again, like a lot of religions will actually ixnay this. Like in Christianity, like doing divination that's basically witchcraft and sorcery, right? Telling somebody's future, saying this is going to happen to them, or foreseeing in the future and saying what's going to happen. I don't do that at all. And I've always refused to do that. So much so that like crystal balls or even tarot cards and being like, oh, this is what I don't touch any of that stuff because I think it's all, part of my language, but complete bullshit. I've seen so many of those people that are just hustlers and grifters and whatever, hacks that are doing it for cash. And so I don't play any of those games. So to me, numbers are, and the study of gematria, which I don't know if we'll even get into that today, but that's all a study of the divinity behind the thing. Not for you to make a bunch of money or get rich or have this or that, or it's not material thing. It's all about, in that sort of sense, as it's understood in the Bible, the Lord's money. It's a currency that is not stuck in fiat currency or shekels or gold and silver or Bitcoin. It's a spiritual energy, that sort of thing. So that's what numbers are there to do. And that's what Kabbalah is. That's what gematria is. That's what it's supposed to be. So
hey, Sausage, what an eclectic group, huh?
I really, I really got into, let's say, numbers and formulas and stuff. More of like when I went into a construction company, I was a concrete contractor, built concrete buildings, foundations, all that stuff. So I actually got to see firsthand how numbers and formulas came to work in that and just creating a building. Okay, have to have so much concrete, so thick, it's so much strength and could hold up so much weight. So there's and allow a little bit of the building to sway a little bit. So it has to sway a little bit. So like you see the numbers in that, it was just that really becomes amazing when they build a building, the math that's involved in that. And I remember being in high school and in calculus and trigonometry and like that was like a death sentence. I hated it.
It's interesting. Yeah. It's interesting because I think they purposefully get people lost in a lot of like equations, and they don't get people to understand the philosophies and all of that stuff behind numbers, right? And what you're saying is dead on, because it's like, okay, well, you can use numbers to literally build entire buildings that you figure out the weight and it's got to be this, all of that sort of stuff, all into building a huge building. And yet at the same time, the various things that you're using to do the blueprints and make sure everything's blah 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 blah, square and plumb and all that sort of stuff is a world of philosophy and mystery. And so what they end up doing is they'll essentially just cut that off and say numbers is just all this, and it's all just formulas and stored, and that's where people will get lost because they're just like, oh, I don't want to deal with any of that. They've essentially taken the mystery out of it.
They don't give it a good base. If they gave you a good base, maybe you understand everything that comes after it better, I guess. Mm-hmm. So it could be, but
in that sense, it's like they're teaching you the language without teaching you the alphabet first. Right? Yeah. And some people can just memorize formulas and be like, oh, well, I know this is the formula for a cube or blah, 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 or the weight of this cylinder and that sort of blah, blah, blah. And so they'll be good at that, memorizing, regurgitating, that sort of stuff, figuring out, being able to punch stuff in. But then when it comes to actually like, okay, well, what can we gather from the number 3? Where do we see that geometrically? Where do we see that, that sort of thing? And that's what's lost. And I think that's where the true mystery is. And that's not just an opinion, as I came to find. That's what Kabbalah is. When you actually take it seriously and get to the heart of it, it's like, no, you're learning the language of God. So
it's like my daughters is like super smart, like my older one's super, but they used to do like math for fun in the summer. I mean, so like she's really good at math, and then like, so just by talking a lot with her, we used to talk about how you find math everywhere. And like I'm saying, you could find math in an airplane. I said, what do you mean? I said, well, they're going to figure out how many people are going to be on there, what's the luggage, what's the weight, where they're going to put people. They just don't willy-nilly throw people on. I said, I remember one time we were coming back from the Hamptons, and we get on a helicopter, and we were supposed to go with 4 people. We showed up with 3, and the pilot got all pissed off at us. He said, you should have called ahead and told me that, because he has to set up the helicopter a certain way to fly according to how many people, how much weight he has on there. So like all of that stuff, just, from building a building to flying a plane, to simply counting money, right? It all comes in. I'm not saying weighing myself. I don't like the pounds, I like kilograms.
Well, it's interesting because it's all around us. It happens all the time, and yet we don't think about it. Just as I said, the example of like you look at the head of a flower. Nobody's being like, 8, 9, 10. But the expression of the beauty comes from the fact that it's mathematically perfect in that sort of sense. It's balanced perfect, just like the building, right? So I mean, you think about it, it's like here we are speaking. Noises are coming out of our mouth that we could map with a sine wave through basic trig. We use that same math. Okay, well, our hands are segmented in fingers, so we have math right here. I'm typing on a computer that has geometric symbols that are even mathematical, like a T-square and an A-frame and a crossbeam and a U-bolt and a C-hook and all that sort of stuff. And then right above that is a bunch of numbers. And then we're on a computer that's built all with math on an internet which uses 0 and 1. We do this all the time and we never think about it, and it's only when you think about it, it's like, oh, geez, no, that's math and this is math and this is math and this thing and this building that I'm in. Oh, that's 90 degrees right there. It's just, it's all around. This is a plane right here. I'm showing you this plane with the digits of my finger. It's just like, it's all over. And so once again, when we look at the sort of elite that should not be, they've just done a bang up job of making us so unawares of it,
Unaware. Also, Marty, can you talk? I know you have written, and I've read this. It's called Redeclaration.us. You actually rewrote the Declaration of Independence as the way it should be read now in our world that we're in. And this is, by the way, a great thing. You did this because you were living in Hawaii and weren't happy with, I guess, the political atmosphere, I believe. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And they'll show where this is. It's Redeclaration.us. I was super fascinated by this.
I thought it needed to be done. And so, because we live in a time right now where we sort of have to make a universal affidavit. We have to, because the people that are in control, and I saw this in Hawaii, we're seeing it all over the world right now. They just don't give a crap. The representatives don't represent us. The political parties don't represent us. The governments don't represent us. And obviously we have these inherent fundamental freedoms that have been given to us by our Creator. And those are being uprooted right now. So I was like, okay, well, we need a Declaration of Independence, but we need it for like we the people of the world, not just the people in America, because this is obviously a worldwide sort of global thing. So I just went and took with the spirit of the original one, just rewrote it for essentially anybody in every country. And so what I'm doing literally right now, my wife's helping me with it, is we're going to print out a pamphlet, and it's going to have this, it's pretty much exactly what I wrote. There's just a few changes. But we're going to put that in there. So the Redeclaration of the unanimous, it's called the Unanimous Redeclaration of We the People. And then in there, I'm going to put a status of affidavit, or affidavit of status, where it's basically a whole list of saying, look, I am a living being. I am the person in the flesh. I'm not a fictional person. Here's my rights that have been granted to be my Creator. It's literally an affidavit that you would write for anybody else, where you could actually get it notarized. So have the Redeclaration, have that, as well as the original Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence, and buy this as one pamphlet. And the reason I'm doing this is because, well, one of the main things I was thinking about is that this could be essentially your new passport. So right now, what they're trying to do is push on, federal ID and vaccine passport and this and this and this. And the people have to collectively stand up and say, no, no. I am me in this, I reside in this body. This is the living spirit in this. I'm not a bunch of letters on a page. I'm not owned by the United States government or the whatever state of Hawaii or anything like that. I have this, which is the original Constitution, a redeclaration, which says that I do redeclare that I have inherent freedoms given to me by God. And not only that, I'm going to have an affidavit of status to literally have a legal document to say, this is who I am. If you're saying I'm anything else, or you saying that I'm bound by anything else, well, no, and done so with all the legal terms, or once again, an actual affidavit. So that's like, you could go get it notarized, put your picture of who you are, and say, this is my ID. Because one of the things I think we all know is the licensing bureaus and the IRS and all of it is just an absolute labyrinth to try to take away our fundamental freedoms. And we have to.
It's more than that. It's Google, it's Facebook, it's everything logged in. It's all locked into the same exact large conglomerate of tech that's actually imposing on top of it. I mean, what's happened in the last 10 years or so, the tech has gotten so great, and then nobody saw it coming that they gave you everything for free and then later on enslaved you.
It's just like socialism. It's all for free. Right? It's all for free until you don't want it, then it's forced upon you, and then if you don't accept it, then they just kick you out.
Exactly.
Except in kicking you out in socialism, that means they just kill you.
And now I understand China just came out with, I think, the Luang coin, which is a cryptocurrency that they gave to everybody. And I understand they can actually tweak it. It comes down to a point where you're able to take that coin and use it and buy and sell and do whatever you want to do. But they could actually, from the top down, go in and tweak it and create and take it all away from you, add to it, or go in there and give it more value or less value. So the value of it is being judged by the top to the people at the bottom. And if you have a bad rating and you're not a good person, they think you're not a good person, they can just wipe you out. You're not there. You're gone. Never mind about your book. You don't exist in society. And that creates the classic have and have nots of the world. The biblical
that's what's happening.
Have and have nots.
Yeah. I mean, it's very, very much so. I think
they call that socialism.
Mm-hmm. It's just so interesting too, because when you look at history, even the alleged history that we've been told about, which I do not agree with, right? I don't trust history, but even that which we've been told, all it is a history of governments going corrupt everywhere. That's all that's ever happened. You know what I mean? And it's like one Holocaust or Holodomor after another, of people being killed, or governments going crazy, or monarchs and queens and blah, 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 blah. This is why we have the Declaration of Independence, because it was like, hey, that's what happened to us. And now it's happening again. And a lot of people just don't believe it could happen in this country. It's like, no, you should expect it to happen in this country. That's what you should expect. Like 100%. There's going to be people that are going to come and try to destroy your country. That should be, obviously. This is so obvious. But we just have a group of people, a lot of people in this country don't believe it can happen. Or don't believe it would happen like this,
I think the problem that you're really going to come up against, and what you're seeing already, is probably, someone keeping these people in check, which used to be the press. If the people in power and the free press are one and the same, you got a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
You got a big problem. You have to get enough people to rise up against that, and have these people not be willing to be abused, lose their living, be canceled, all of this stuff that's happening. So it's a tall task.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we also believe that we were brought up in a society we were allowed to express ourselves and say what we wanted to do. We could, as long as we weren't hurting others. I grew up with the belief that as long as I wasn't hurting someone else, I could say or do whatever I want. And apparently now you can't, and that is really disturbing. It's almost like I've been fooled. I've been hoodwinked. I was told I can I can do anything I want and say whatever I want because I'm an American, and now suddenly I can't.
Don't forget, Peace, you as a performer, as a comedian, were probably the last group of people that were allowed to use that kind of humor and get away with certain things, right? Because it was humor. You weren't serious about it. Now you can't even do that, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, you saw our friend Jim Norris, is a comedian. He's on a cruise ship. He has to actually put up a sign before the people come into the lounge for the late show that if you don't come here if you're going to be offended by this, and the other thing, before he did the show. That's how bad it goes. I mean, Marty, John is like an awesome ventriloquist. And I remember he got a Donald Trump puppet and he got a Hillary Clinton puppet, and he would go do a show and whatever. He'd make fun of them both equally, but people would, I mean, there was a woman one night throwing lemons at him when he was doing Hillary Clinton. He'd make her fall down or whatever you would make her do, and they would get super pissed off and write letters, don't have this guy back no more. I mean, it got really hairy.
And as a comedian, like, could you not imagine two better people to make fun of than Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump? Like, it's like, and now we got Biden. I'm like, if I was a comedian, this is just like fruit, man. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I mean,
I already ordered the Biden puppet. As a matter of fact,
I was thinking this today.
I was on the treadmill this morning. I'm working on the treadmill and I'm writing jokes on the iPad. And I was thinking about this morning. Imagine if an alien did come down from outer space and land here, right? And the first thing the alien would say would be, "Take me to your leader." And I would go, "Joe Biden?" He'd go, "Okay." And I'd say, "Do me a favor. I'll bring it to him, but make sure you have your big laser gun really ready." I want to just take him out now. Get rid of him right now. It won't take a lot,
Yeah, our leader.
Buddy, I know we got to go, and I have to tell you that I would love you to come back one day, and if you can, and talk about one subject, because you have so much stuff you've done, and we're just like introducing you to our people in a sense. Just before I leave, though, one of the most important things that I've been wondering about you for a long time, you have a lot of energy and a lot of passion towards what you do, and I'm wondering, is that is that your nature, or are you just passionate about geometry and numbers and math, or is it this just who you are? I mean, do you go to, I don't know, do you watch this with your wife and go, "Yeah, I can't wait to go do this," and you're all excited? You're a passionate person.
I am a passionate person. I've had that for a long time, but it's also doubled or whatever, or I've kept that passion because of my commitment to my spirituality. Because to be spiritual, I mean, that's what it means, to be spirited. That's what the root of that word is. So, and like these things, I get into them, they excite me, and I think they're awesome. And every time,
that's why
I know we got to go, but I will say this, just one thing. Yeah. As a teacher, the reason you teach is to remind yourself of the things, why you fell in love with them in the first place. And so I get to do that all the time. So it's awesome. So
awesome. And I love the word inspiration, because I am inspired by your work. And the word inspiration means to me that from spirit, it comes down into the head and through your body and back out. And you've given me a lot of things to think about over the last couple of years with all your material. So I really appreciate it. And I hope you continue to do it. And I look forward to hearing everything. And I'm joining your site tonight. So where do we find Marty Leeds? It's going to be martyleeds33.com. That's LEEDS. There you go. And if you want to read his Redeclaration, it's redeclaration.us, correct?
Yes. MartyLeeds33.com, Marty Leeds 33 on DLive, Marty Leeds Live on YouTube. I'm on Twitch. And just go to the site. This is the best way. So, and yeah, let's do it again.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Take care, Marty. Thank you for coming. I wish you lots of luck.
All right.
Thank you.
And thank Leland. Right. Thank you. And my guest. We also want to thank John Galasso. By the way, John Galasso is the booker of our show. And here he is, John Galasso's book, A Smile, a Grin, a Laugh. That's Life. You can find that at his website.
Before we go, I got to ask you, how the Redeclaration, right? .us. I wanted to ask him, but maybe when he comes back, we ask him. I want to know if anybody came after him while he was doing that.
Good question.
He's on YouTube. Yeah, I'm just so curious. Maybe he'll email us.
You know as well as I do that if he gets any good traction with this, which I hope he does, they will come after. They will go down. They will try to close down anything that threatens their power. And I hate to say it, but he's in for the fight of his life if that takes off on the way I would like it to.
Yeah, I would stand there and fight with him. You know me.
Me too. I'd be right behind him.
Go right there, man. That's why I'm saving all my money.
Hey, listen.
So
You know what they
everything
say?
right.
Save all your cash. While we're still here on YouTube, before they throw us off, click the smash button, like and subscribe, and tell your friends. And we'll see you on all the other platforms as well. BitChute and Cloud Hut and blah 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 blah. Thanks a lot, Mikey. This has been too much fun. Thank you also the wonderful Marty Leeds. I can't wait. I hope he comes back.